a year, which it was unchanged until 2009. And the Oregonian legislature, with real daring, raised it. It's now $150 per year. No, good point. Not terribly low. The increased taxes on wealthy individuals was much higher. What could be done here? My conclusion. You're hearing now talk, in addition about a recovery, and by the way, even the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and our politicians have at least the minimum decency to refer to this as a jobless recovery. That's a little bit like saying we are currently enjoying a war-filled peace. I mean, either you have war or you have peace. But a recovery that is jobless, that's called not a recovery, because there's no jobs. Even in economics, that part we get. But in public relations, all things are possible. So we have a jobless recovery. Here's my final point for you. What's being proposed, as Todd said at the beginning, is that we regulate the corporations. And we hope for the banks to lend money. No way is this going to work. The banks are not going to lend money. I've already told you why. Because there's no one worth lending money to in the United States. Too risky. What about the regulations? In the 1930s, Roosevelt passed all kinds of regulations. The problem, when you regulate corporations, all you're doing is giving them another problem to solve. The board of directors of every corporation is there to make money for the company. If the government puts regulations on them, they go to work figuring out how to evade the regulations, or weaken the regulations, or get rid of the regulations. The last 40 years is the history in the United States of how business got together to undo and get rid of all the regulations that were passed in the 1930s. That's what they do, not because they're mean and nasty, but because their job is to make money, and these rules and regulations limit their ability to do that. As long as you have private enterprises with masses of people who come to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and a tiny group of people called a board of directors, 15 to 20 people, who are there because they're elected by the major shareholders of the company, another group of 15 to 20 people, as long as you have them in the driver's seat and the mass of workers coming to work, they're the ones who get the profits. They're the ones who get the difference between the productivity and the wage. They're going to do everything in their power as they struggle with one another in competition to get more money. They have the incentive to get around whatever regulations you put on them. But more than the incentive, because they get the profits, they have the resources to achieve the incentive you've provided them. And corporations have shown us how good they are at getting around the regulations that we put on. To respond to the current crisis by another set of regulations is crazy. We know what will happen. The only difference is it'll happen faster this time because the corporations have 50 years of practice getting around the last set of regulations that a similar crisis produced. Here's the bottom line. We're not going to get out of this crisis. We're going to face a long-term decline in the standard of living of American workers. We can't work more. We can't borrow anymore. Corporations in America are deciding that the American consumer is history. Their focus is elsewhere. They're going to sell to the new rising middle classes of Asia and Africa, and we're going to look more and more like the working classes in most other parts of the world look. That's the prospect that lays ahead, and those of you coming to graduate out of this college are going to discover it in the job market real soon if you haven't already. This is a crisis that has to be responded to by asking this question. Isn't it time, maybe, for a system that has collapsed twice in 75 years to say we can do better than an economic system that isn't working for us anymore? What would that mean? You'd have to finally bring democracy to the workplace. If it's good to say that in the community we should elect the people who make the decisions that we have to live with, then why does that not apply inside the business as well? If the workers had run the businesses themselves in the 1970s, guess what would not have happened? They wouldn't have stopped raising their wages. There was no reason to. They wouldn't have done it. Guess what else workers wouldn't have done if they were running the businesses in the 1970s? They wouldn't have moved jobs overseas. Kind of dumb, don't you think? If you're the worker, you're not going to fire yourself. Unlikely. They wouldn't therefore have gone on a borrowing binge because they wouldn't have had to. We finally make democracy in the workplace and would change our economy. That's a big change. That's a fundamental change. But if we don't ask big questions and we don't consider fundamental changes, we're facing a long-term decline because there is no kickstarting this economy. Workers' wages aren't rising. They can't borrow more. They can't do work. They can't carry this economy. And business is taking its profits and looking out of the United States for the future. It's up to the American working class whether it permits this situation to continue. And if we don't make changes in the direction that I'm talking about, we're going to see the other side of that coin. A growing rage and anger as Americans who are not prepared for it see their future looking bad and worse and begin to look for scapegoats.
Yeah.
Muslims,
Yeah.
black people, Jews, foreigners. You know the category, you know the candidates. Our history is full of them. So it's not just we need to look in a new direction to solve our problem. We need to worry about alternative solutions that are going to be put forward by other people as the anger and the rage that you already see in the teabag movement begins to percolate and spread, as it has in countries and societies like ours. In a country very much like the United States, called Germany, a new political party was born 4 years ago. It's called the Left. In German, Die Linke. It's a party whose slogan is, Germany can do better than capitalism. And they are pushing the kinds of things I just mentioned. In the last national election, they stood for office. They got 12% of the vote in Germany. 1 out of 8 German citizens voted that they need to solve their problems, very similar to ours, by fundamentally changing their economic system. Because Germany has proportional representation, unlike us, they have a huge block of delegates in their Congress, in their government. So the idea that one can't have a politics that makes these kinds of changes that really respond to our crisis, I think that's a mistake. We can do that too. We just have to understand how we got into this mess, which I hope I've made clear, and get a sense of what's wrong with the solutions that are not working, and have then the courage to begin to think about alternatives, because this country badly needs it. Thank you very much.
We have about 30 minutes or so for questions, and so what I'm going to do is just take 3 questions at a time, and I'm going to prioritize Berkeley City College students. So that's what we're doing. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'll call on you. So, red shirt in the
We're
back.
not Berkeley City College students.
Huh?
Unless we have white hair, doesn't mean we're not.
No, I know.
Berkeley City College
I know.
students.
I'm not. So red shirt in the back.
Hi, my name's Felix. I'm actually from San Francisco City College. Sorry. I just have one of these shirts. My question is, do you know what the tax percentage in Oregon currently is on the rich?
Okay, buddy.
One of the arguments I hear about raising taxes on corporations a lot is that if we do that, they'll leave. I always just say that, well, they haven't done anything good for us anyway, so leave. But, I mean, what is your response to that argument?
Yeah, I'm a proud Berkeley City College student in Sharon Coleman's poetry class. I invite people to join that class. My question is, what about unions? I've heard nothing said about unions And what part did unions have in this history, and what's your idea on how they fit into this whole thing?
Great questions. To the first question, which is a very good question, I plead complete ignorance. I don't know what the rates are. I wish I did, but I
Can
don't.
I give a California statistic?
Please.
It has the third highest tax rate already in the country for income.